This is the Western Obsessions TV podcast, where hunting's not a hobby, it's an obsession. All right, guys, welcome back to the Western Obsessions TV podcast. On this podcast, I got a guest from Stuck in the Rut, Tom Schneider. These guys know how to get it done. Really good guys, really good at hunting. So I'm excited today to pick Tom's brain on everything he's got going on. Tom, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I always enjoy these podcasts. It's fun to talk about hunting.
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
You get two guys talking about hunting, man. These podcasts could probably go a week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what you been doing, man? How's life been?
Oh, good. We just moved into our house. I wish we were doing more spring bear hunting. We've had a little luck with the spring bear, but it's just been such a busy spring for us. We've from trying to keep our regular jobs moving, to actually building my own house. I finally just finished my own house, so now I can catch up with the work that I've been slacking with. I feel bad because I have a lot of clients and stuff when it comes to I do property cleanup type work from mulching, grinding to tree removal, so on and so forth. And so I've just had a big list of people that I've had to put on to the side temporarily till I got my house built. Now I'm playing a lot of catch up this spring. And then on top of that, some nights Trav's like, hey, let's go bear hunt tonight. I'm like, ooh, okay, let's do it. We'll squeeze it in. He just got a nice one two nights ago. Travis did. So
yeah,
that's good. Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice, man. So your full-time job is that property cleanup is what you were just talking about there. And you guys build houses too.
Yes. Yes.
And then you guys sneak off and do a little hunting here and there. Not a little, man. You guys get a lot of hunting.
Yeah.
How does that work?
And so usually this is our schedules. We bust our butt and we work hard all summer long. We don't take a lot of time off in the summer. And then when the fall hits, we pretty much just take the whole month, all the months off. So if we have like a particular client, like for example, if Travis and I are working on a project with a particular client, we just tell them like straight off, like, you're not going to see us during hunting season. So if you're going to hire us, just understand that September, you may not see us and your project will be put on hold. And so we kind of like warn them in advance, like, look, like this is our schedule. This is our hobby. And so it's our passion more or less. And so some people respect it. Some people say, oh, okay, yeah. And then later on, we'll get that phone call that they're not happy that nothing's getting done. Like, we warned you, we're hunting. So, but that, really, hunting, the success comes in putting in the time. And so, for me, I really can't be that successful if I just, if I'm a weekend warrior, it really doesn't work well for me, because you got to put all the puzzle pieces together on a hunt. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just go out on one weekend and in 2 days kill something. I mean, it works sometimes, but for me, I need to put in the time in the woods and start, if it's analyzing tracks, if it's figuring out what the animals are doing, you just got to put in your time in the woods. And so for me, I like to take off lots of time to do that.
And that's nice. You have that luxury by owning your own business to do that. And that's pretty cool. You find cool clients to say, okay, I get it. You're going off hunting. And I'm assuming the community that you live in, maybe hunting's pretty prevalent, so people get it. Yeah. But you're right, man. Like, in order to be successful hunting, you have to put in the time. And I think that percentage, let's just talk about like archery elk hunting. I think only like 10% of archery elk hunters are successful. And I would venture to say the 10% is the same guys or girls are successful often. They continue to fall in that 10% because they put time in. And the other 90%, it might be the weekend warriors are like, they haven't been able to get out in the mountains and analyze the tracks, see what the animals are doing. And they're like, well, I want to go hunting anyway. I'm going to take 3 days, 4 days off and just go in the woods and see what I can do. What do you think on that?
Yeah, and I actually have a really good example where, because even in high school, I was very obsessed with hunting, and I think you and I both have had haters in a sense where people always had excuses in why we were successful. Oh, it's the guns or long range, or this or that, and it's like people just come up with excuses on why people are successful, but I think you got to ask questions, the real questions of like, okay, like rather than being jealous and being upset that this person's successful, maybe I should learn from them and,
Yeah.
and actually figure out what they're doing that's right. And so one of my friends, I would consider a friend, he we never really hung out, but we were like, buddies in high school, like during class time. And he would always ask me about, man, how do you get in the elk all the time? And because we were, I had a very good success rate even in high school. Our family did. My dad had a lot of experience elk hunting, and he did the same. He had the same schedule where he's a logger, and so in September he shut down the whole logging operation, and all him and his employees would go out elk hunting. So that's I'm kind of following my own dad's footsteps there with how he operated his own business. And well, anyways, so this friend in particular, like, he was struggling and he wanted to learn how to hunt elk and kill elk. And and this is after high school now, and several years later, I'm seeing that he's killing a lot of stuff now. And I'm like, man, good for him. Like, this was a guy that I never saw kill stuff. And now he's getting out there, he's killing elk, he's killing mule deer and stuff. And so I just thought I'd ask him, I'm like, hey, man, what are you doing different than what you were doing before? And he said, I'm putting in the time. Like, it's like, I actually just take off time to hunt, and he explained to me back in the earlier days, he just partying and stuff was so on top of his mind that hunting was the last thing. And I think that's a lot of it too, is sometimes people don't hunt for the particular reasons to harvest. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I want kind of to paint a picture in some people's mind where some people think that hunting is about sitting around a campfire and telling hunting stories. Like the podcaster, because this is the time I actually really get to tell hunting stories. We don't have time to tell hunting stories when we're on a hunt. Like when we're on a hunt, like even on days we don't kill stuff, like we're coming out of the woods in the dark. By the time we get to our tent, we got to do some quick camp chores, and then we got to go to sleep because we got to wake up 4 o'clock in the morning again.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. We don't have time to sit down and tell hunting stories at hunting camp. And so we take hunting and possibly too, we do take hunting a little bit more seriously. We don't, and if you do, I it's nothing wrong with it, but we don't drink at hunt, when we go hunting or anything like that. And I always wondered, like, man, like, because I've had friends that can't get up out of bed the next morning. It's like, why do you even drink?
Yeah.
Like at hunting camp, when it's going to be a struggle to get up in the morning. For me, I try to eat right. I try to do everything I can so that when I wake up the next morning, I am refreshed and ready to run.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm the same way. And I think it's the type of hunters that the category we fall into, or we're obsessed about hunting. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of hunters that are not as obsessed as we are, and that's great. And where they find their enjoyment is hanging out with other guys or ladies and BS and having beers over the camp. And that's great. That's absolutely awesome. And it's enjoyable and it is fun. But if you are obsessed about it, like we are, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we take advantage of every little opportunity we can to increase our chances. So like you said, no drinks at night before you go to bed, so you can wake up at sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning because you have a 3-hour hike to get to where you want to go. And then you're hunting all day, maximizing your efforts, and you're eating right, you're drinking the water, you're maybe doing some electrolytes so you can stay hydrated. And then you're hunting till absolutely dark and then hiking 3 hours out and you're only getting 4 hours of sleep. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, we're
Lots
just a
of
little
days like that.
obsessed. Yeah. And that's how we enjoy it. And so to other people, like, man, you guys are crazy. That seems like way too much work and that doesn't seem enjoyable. But for me, it's very enjoyable. Even though it looks like I'm super intense and I'm very serious about hunting, I enjoy getting into the animals, whether or not I harvest something or not. Like, I enjoy that process, right? So we're just kind of more obsessed about it, I think.
Yeah. I think in the end too, it's kind of the reward, and I've had to explain this to even anti-hunters too, like, like how people, they think we're obsessed over the kill. To me, I have the obsession of the reward of the hunt. And to me, it's no different. Like if I plant a garden, I feel reward if my garden actually worked, if everything's growing right. It's the same thing with building this house. Like I built this house with my own hands. I did hire the plumbing and the electrical out, but everything else I did by hand. There is a reward to that. Like, I did this. Like I would have not, like, I know every inch of this house. Versus, if somebody just bought a house and just moved in, like it means a little bit more to me, this house is, and I think it's the same thing with the hunt. Like even if they eat the meat, like, obviously for me, I like going for a big mule deer buck or a big bull elk. But when I eat the meat, it's more meaningful. Like I did this, and that to me is more of it's a reward that I'm getting out of it. And maybe it's just, I think it's people that possibly don't look that way. For me, I'm a very much a person that I think ahead, and I think, where am I going to be 2 years from now? Where am I going to be 3 years from now? So for me, like when it comes to hunting, like for me, like it could be, I know I'm going to be on this hunt for 10 days. And so I'm not looking in the right now. I'm not looking at how hard the hunt is right now. For me, I'm looking in my mind, I'm like, I want to kill that big bull. What do I have to do to kill that big bull? And so I do everything in my power to try to kill that big bull. And I don't think about the aching joints or the aching pain, the pains until after the hunt. Now when I show up at home, I'm like, man, what did I do to my body? that kind of comes after.
Yeah. And that goal of killing that big bull or big mule deer, that's the 2%, that's the icing on the cake. But it's the 90% of the process of getting there. Okay, where is he? Where do we think the animal's at? How do I get there? How do I hunt them? Where do I camp? Where do I do for food, water? How do I be safe on? Like, that's the whole process of doing it is the value. And then even if you got, okay, I found him, I got real close, I didn't get the kill, but 98% of that hunt I enjoyed, and that was the process. I didn't get the kill. Well, maybe next year, right? Like it's not a huge deal. And you still enjoyed your time out there.
Yeah. You still have to. You can't hate the hunt, like that's what hunting is. I wouldn't consider as I say some people consider hunting as a gamble. They'll say that word like, oh, hunting's a gamble. And I wouldn't say a gamble, because a gamble is something where, like regardless in how much effort you put into it, it's either you come out successful or not. But like for me, it's more like I look at it a little bit more like investing. Like, there's risk to investing, but if you do it right and you put in your time, you can come out great. And I think it's the same thing with hunting, where you put in your time in the right places and you use your knowledge in the right places, you're more likely to be successful. But there's still a chance you're not going to kill something, right? And there's always still that road hunter that kills a really giant, like a real big giant. And you're just like, what the heck? How did he kill that? But what's his odds in doing that again? Not high, like it's the guys that put in their time out there in the woods. Those are the guys that are increasing their odds in killing a big animal that they're after. And the one thing I love about hunting too, especially like you're saying, for me, it's not always about the kill, but I like to be in action. What really pisses me off, sorry, maybe I'm not supposed to.
No, you're good. Cuss. Let it go.
Yeah. Okay. But the one thing that upsets me is when I'm hunting an area and there's just no animals, period. Like, you know what I mean? that's probably the most upsetting thing to me. And that really has, and I won't get too much right now unless you want to talk about, but like wolves create those areas where literally there's not a deer track, there's not an elk track in the entire drainage. And that's kind of really what gets me is like, for me, I like to have action. I like to see wildlife. It's just nice. I mean, even if it's not hunting season, I like to get up in the mountains and see moose, see elk, see deer. I'd like to set out trail cameras. I like to see what's living in the area. It's really neat when you feel like the area, you know what I mean? And the ghosts that live in those areas. There's like I love, like, one of the biggest rewards for me is just knowing that there's a big giant mule deer living in an area and nobody else knows about it. I think people still think that's impossible at this day of age, because especially I think of Utah, and everybody's like, oh, that's, they got a name for it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Greg the Buck, or that's Popeye. Well, I guess that was a Wyoming muley, but everybody gives these big bucks names and everybody knows about that deer. But I think what's really neat is actually hunting a really big buck that nobody knows about. And even just knowing, I think just in the fact of knowing that deer exists is a reward in some way. Like, man, I can't believe that deer exists. And I'm like, I don't know if anybody else that knows about that animal. And to be the only one after it kind of makes the hunt.
Yeah. And you don't get that without putting a lot of time into the woods. And back to what you said about investment, that makes a lot of sense. There are risks in hunting because you're investing your time and energy. And if you go into an area, you may think the risk is low of not having any game in there. But if you get in there and there's no game in the area, you've just invested maybe at least a day, if not 2 days of your time in there. And then you got to go back to a plan B, which is move camp out, rehike in, set up camp. Yeah, it's a risk investment for sure. Yeah. So we'll get back to the wolf thing for sure, because that's a big topic. You guys are very good wolf hunters too. I want to get into that, but let me kind of back way up and like, how'd you guys get started hunting and like started with Stuck in the Rut?
Yeah. So it definitely started with my dad. Well, not Stuck in the Rut itself, but just hunting, because my dad had a strong passion of hunting. He had the elk bug, he had the mule deer bug, and he lived in what I would consider as the golden years, right? Him and his friends did, where he was killing 30-inch mule deer on public land, and same with some of his friends. And and he even says to this day that he was one of the first, he's in his 60s now, but he says like archery hunting was not popular, and they would have these long hunting seasons. You would be the only guy on the mountain bugling elk, and you would be having the action, more action than you can have. And they were sitting there. I mean, he said the bugle tubes that they had back then were kind of like comparable to like a vacuum tube, like one of those little tubes.
Yeah.
And it just comes out, like when you blow on them, it just sounds like a whistle. And so but anyways, I mean, he has all the stories. All his friends have the stories of the big bulls that got away and some of the big muleys that they've killed and stuff. And anyways, well, it's kind of inevitable like that. I was going to get into hunting, right? Because my dad was that obsessed with it with himself. And he had at the time, in the 1990s, the booming industry was logging, and there was 18 mills running in our area where we live. And that was before the environmentalist groups and stuff came out. But anyways, like, and a lot of people don't know this, but logging actually benefits wildlife. So as the more logging there was, the more wildlife would come out, because that brush gets choked out if the timber gets too thick, the brush gets choked out and can't grow. Well, if you log certain areas and do it right, that brush can now grow. It has sunlight, and now there's feed for wildlife. And so the elk numbers, along with the logging, spiked. Our moose population spiked. The mule deer population spiked. Everything spiked through logging. At least in the area we live. Every region's different. But during that time, when my young years, even when I was 8, 9 years old, Dad would take us out in the woods. I remember him calling an elk and shooting them, and I would just be there as a tag along, and he wouldn't take us on like extreme hunts when we were that young, but he would, the thing is, I remember him walking, we'd get out of the pickup to throw a bugle and get elk answering right next to the rig. And then we'd walk off the road 50 yards and start calling it an elk. I mean, that's how stupid it was back then. You know what I mean? And there was not a lot of hunters so I still even remember, like, in my younger years, I kind of feel weird saying that the good old days, like I experienced part of the good old days in my younger years. And I think what really got me hooked was shed hunting too. So my dad, he wasn't much into shed hunting, but he'd find sheds in the woods. And so when we were young, he would kind of plan them and like, oh, like, let's look for sheds, kids. And so he'd walk us through the woods, and I'd pick up a shed and stuff. And you know what I mean? And
then like I got Easter excited. Egg hunt. It's like an Easter egg hunt. Yeah. For sheds.
Yeah. Awesome. And then I think all of us siblings got addicted to shed hunting too. So we were just as big into hunting as shed hunting. And well, I'd say my high school years, I still didn't have like, the full on responsibility of living on my own. I still worked, I worked in the summers, had my summer job of dad would actually, like, when I hit 16, I was logging in the woods with Dad. But in the fall, I take off as much school as I possibly could to hunt. And yeah, I think probably the most trouble I got in school was just taking too much time off hunting and trying to find every loophole possible. If it was like getting a doctor's appointment on a day I wanted to go hunt, and then I'd like go to the doctor appointment, then I'd hunt that rest of the day, or I just call in sick, even though I wasn't sick, and everything I could to save as many days as I could. I think in our school we were allowed 7 sick days, and so we always had to try to find ways around it.
Yeah,
but
you definitely maxed that out, huh?
Yeah, I would totally max that out. But yeah, the elk was one thing that was obvious, and I was going to get into, because elk was Dad's passion, and he'd always take time off to hunt elk. So I killed my first elk the first year that I had my hunting. The first year after I took hunter safety and I was old enough to hunt, I killed my first elk. It was a young cow, but it was my first. And then when I was 13, I killed my first bull elk, and from there, I was killing lots of elk. And I think the opportunity we had was really neat. Well, in Idaho, and I don't know, now I'm kind of a little back and forth with it. So in Idaho, as me being a resident, I can buy a resident tag. And if there's any non-resident tags left over, I can buy a non-resident tag. And so when I was younger, I could kill 2 elk and I can kill 2 deer in Idaho. Well, then me living close to the Montana border, if I was able to obtain a Montana deer and elk tag there, I can literally kill, 3 deer and 3 elk total close to home. and so I think, for me in my younger years, I would consider, myself and Travis, we were a little bloodthirsty, and we killed just a ton of stuff. You know what I mean? Like any tag we can get a hold of, we would get it and fill it, you know what I mean? And so we had, like I said, we did live in the good old days before I would say, considerably. Like I'd say hunting has changed a lot with the amount of hunting pressures in the woods. And then I think the other thing we fight too is our way of managing predators. And, before then, like I felt like people weren't pushing predators into our atmosphere or in our ecosystem as much. And now there's groups that kind of, they control our areas, if that makes sense. And they're not from around here. And it kind of gets annoying at times. However, I will say that I think we've beat their own system. And I know they're upset about it. So, now I feel like we've gained control over our area once again. we're allowed to hunt particular predators that we weren't allowed to before. And I'll say that we're actually receiving a little bit of a recovery. Like I'm seeing big deer and big elk show back up in areas that I haven't seen big deer and big elk in years. And so there is, like, although I say like back in the good old days, I'll say like I think the good old days are slightly coming back. But then we do have the issue with, hunting pressure. There's just, hunting has become more and more popular, which I'm actually happy about. Partially happy about, because you need people to get into hunting to respect it and understand it. Like there's a power in numbers. However, I think just like me, and I think we like to have our hunting spots, and it's sometimes like, dang it, when somebody else finds your new hunting or a hunting spot you've had for years, you're like, oh, yeah. Okay. But but I'm no different, right?
Yeah, it's a catch-22, man. More hunters we have, the more money the outdoor industry has, which can then help maintain the populations of the animals that we like to hunt, right? So, but
yeah, you said that way better than I did.
But selfishly, I want my spots, man. Come on, everybody hunt, but no one hunt where I hunt. Okay. That's what I want.
Yeah. And thing is, I'm a non-resident. So like for me, people can be upset about non-residents but yet don't we sometimes travel? Like I'll travel to Colorado and hunt. I'll hunt Utah. So I'm a non-resident. I'm hunting someone else's hunting grounds that they've hunted since they were kids. And so it is what it is.
You touched on predator control and groups trying to bring in predators and that whole debacle here. Let's dig into that and open up that can of worms a little bit and see how deep we can go.
Oh boy, are you sure you're ready to open this up? Oh my God.
Well, it's changed a lot, man. And here's I'll just give you my 2 cents real quick and let you dig in, because I know you've got a lot of good stuff to say about, especially wolf hunting. Colorado just recently released, wolves into Colorado, which I was against. I know, the theory behind it is helping the ecosystem, but my opinion with wolves is they hunt for sport, and obviously they have to hunt to survive. But I think I just saw this on Instagram the other day, is 2 wolves killed 140. It might've been on your guys' post, 140 some sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might've been your guys' post. Actually, I saw that. And, so wolves hunt for sport. And then you got these groups that think it would be cool to reintroduce wolves back into areas, and they don't fully understand what they're doing, in my opinion. But it has changed recently. Like you said, that battle has changed. And one of the tools I think that has helped us a lot is a group called Howl for Wildlife. Have you heard of those guys?
I have. Yes, I have.
Where it's basically we're pulling together our voices as hunters, and we can they advocate, right? So basically what you do is you go and you join Howl for Wildlife. If an issue comes up, you basically just a couple clicks of the button, and they'll send letters to the governor or the legislation in your state that need to see the letters, and they're bombarded with our voices on issues. And it's really helped out a lot. But Tom, what are you seeing, man, as far as predator stuff like wolves and ways that we can help with that?
Yeah. And yeah, that's a good organization. The Foundation for Wildlife Management's another one. That's the one that actually has really helped Idaho. That's why Idaho is so relaxed with their with what we're able to do with wolves, and wolf hunting. So that organization, the idea behind the Foundation for Wildlife Management, they wanted to reward the wolf hunter, because it is tough to hunt wolves. And it's actually, I'll be honest in saying this, and it's one of those animals, it's pretty easy to get discouraged hunting them, because they're such a smart and intelligent animal. And, I'd say out of any animal I've hunted, they're very, very challenging. And so it can be a little irritating, and it's hard to put in that much time to actually be able to kill a wolf. So the foundation needed a way to reward people to be out in the woods. And so they did it's not a bounty, but it's more of a reimbursement program. So they'll pay you for your hunting expenses. But you can write off your gun, you can write off your pickup tires or anything like that. So if you kill a wolf, you can get up to $1,000 per wolf you kill in the state of Idaho. Now in Montana, they just finally opened it to where now they're getting $500 a wolf. So anyone who kills a wolf in Montana gets $500, but you got to be a member of the Foundation for Wildlife Management. But what's great with this foundation is it has grown a lot of money, and it's been able to pull a lot of, they're able to pull around a little bit when it comes to making laws and regulations on wolf hunting, which is really great. And the funny thing is, I'm trying to not get too radical here.
Go as radical as you want, man.
I try not to, but it's so hypocritical that these environmentalist groups are now saying, oh, we're getting politics involved and we're doing this and that. They're upset and how we're pulling it, but it's like, oh, you hypocrite, you have done the same exact thing. That's how we ended up with wolves here in the landscape in the first place. You refuse to listen to wildlife biologists. You refuse to listen to science, and you've just pushed your agenda right into our backyard. And you know what I mean? And that's exactly, all we did is we figured out their game, and we're playing their game, and now they're upset that we figured out how they do it. And you know what I mean? And they do it. And this is what really irritates me, is they're doing it and getting funds from people that don't know anything about wolves. One of the newer organizations that I try to keep tabs of, these anti-groups, and particular for wolves, there's this one group now that has started, and they're selling dog food in places of New York, and all the big chains in New York and big cities like that. And in every sale, their advertisement is that every sale goes to money in relisting the wolf, putting it back on the endangered species list. And if anybody knows the wolves in Idaho, we are way over objective right now. They said, and they promised us, that if we can get our wolf numbers to 150 wolves, we would have a hunting season. But when we hit the 150, they fought us in court and they put it back on the endangered species list. Now we're up to over 1,500 wolves right now in Idaho. 1,500. And that's way too many on our landscape. Way too many on our landscape. And people are like, well, that doesn't seem like a lot. But if you think of how much one wolf can kill, that's a lot. That's too much.
Oh yeah.
And I think as sad as being, where we live, I have personally witnessed the complete destruction a wolf can create. Now I will step back a little bit and tell you you're asking a little bit about our background with wolves. So one of the first wolves I've ever seen was probably back in around 2005 or 2006. And we were actually out mule deer hunting, and this was an area where we could sit up and you can glass across the canyon. And if you spent a full day there during the rut, you could see close to a dozen mule deer bucks just passing through. Well, this one day in particular, it was weird. There was nothing. Usually you'd at least see a doe or something, on a bad day, but it was like, there was nothing. We're like, man, this is weird. So we got up there, we hiked all the way in there just to look at this big canyon. There was nothing whatsoever. And like, this is very unusual. And so finally, so I know people are going to mock this, but we were young and dumb. And so, but Trav's like, hey, let's just shoot a rock across the canyon and see if we can get something moving,
Sure.
And so we shot.
Those are called deer drives back in the Midwest.
Yeah. We were just trying to get something moving, and out of the, there's a bunch of timber patches. So we shoot, and a wolf just darts out of we were probably 600 yards, and I could not believe the size of this wolf, because, it was across the canyon. Like, man, that thing is huge. And it was just running down. We're like, what is that? We were like trying to figure out in our head, what is that thing just darting down the canyon? It's just a big black wolf just ran all the way down the ridge. But I'll tell you right now that area is, to this day, has still never recovered. It's 15 years later, and it just never came back. Like, it was literally, it wasn't long. The thing is, I think sometimes when, let's say a mountain lion population gets out of control, or a bear population, you'll notice like over time, you'll see a deer decrease in number or something like that, or diseases and stuff too. But with wolves, it's almost immediate. It's like, it's literally within 2 years, that area, it wasn't even huntable anymore. It went from an area where we'd see close to a dozen bucks a day during hunting season to like,
Nothing.
we're not even going back there. Like there's not like, it's a waste of time. And there's plenty of habitat. Like the habitat's great. There's a lot of brush for the mule deer to feed on, but there's just nothing there. And so we'd avoid that area, but it kind of worked like a plague. So we, in the area that we live next to 3 different mountain ranges. So we just, okay, let's go to the next drainage. So we'd hunt the next drainage, and same thing. It just kept happening. It was just this vicious cycle. But the thing is, they just reproduce so quickly. So you just have new packs being created, new territory is being claimed. And I would notice it with shed hunting too. So in the springtime, that's where I noticed the most damage, by the way, was in the springtime, where I would go into a wintering range and there would just be carcasses laying everywhere. Like it felt like, you probably watched Lion King as a kid, right? And you see when they're in the hyena boneyard, that literally, there's some moments where I'm like, man, I feel like I'm in a little episode of Lion King here. With it's like a boneyard, just a boneyard, and we're just like, similar to like the sheep situation, right? They were sitting ducks, they had nowhere to move, and they just got slaughtered. It's the same thing where like you get these mule deer and they're stuck in this wintering range, they can't go anywhere. One thing I've noticed with mountain lions, they'll kill one animal out of there and then they kind of move on and they'll bury it and they'll come back later for it. But like wolves, they'll literally just pound it. Like they get in a wintering range and they'll just zigzag and just pound it and just knock it, like, and they'll wipe out a whole wintering range in one winter.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh crap, like I just lost a shed hunting spot. You're picking, rather than sheds, you're picking up deadheads. And then the next year you don't get anything. And we lost a lot of our good quality like animals, you know what I mean? Like there's still animals reproducing and growing, but like it seemed like a deer elk just couldn't make it 5 years without getting killed, so we weren't getting the animals that were reaching their full potential and antler growth. But they did open a hunting season in 2011, and I felt like it's taken such a long time to finally figure them out. So it's just like I said, you're hunting the most intelligent predator on the landscape. And so like, even though there was just like tons of wolves in the woods, people weren't killing them the first couple of years. Like they were like getting out there, everybody was amped up to kill wolves, but they weren't killing them. They were there. You're in tracks every day, but they're super fast. They don't stand around for a good shot. You know what I mean? They don't stand broadside. You can't stop a wolf. And you kill one wolf out of a pack and they won't come into a call again. And then trapping is another thing, but trapping is actually probably been the most effective way. But again, wolves figure out trappers. And even some of the best trappers I know to this day, they said the wolves that they're after don't even come to eat their bait piles anymore because they know. But this is actually one of the head of the Foundation for Wildlife Management, Justin Webb. He was telling me that the wolves he's after, that if they see, like, because they run snowmobile trails all the time, so at nighttime they'll share the roads with people. They'll run those roads at night, but in the daytime they won't typically run roads. But like because like a trapper, usually when he pulls over, his snowmobile to set a trap, you know what I mean?
Sure.
He said his wolves know that. So like anytime he pulls over the snowmobile to like, to set a trap or something, he'll come back the next day and he'll see the wolf tracks running down the road. As soon as those wolves see the snowmobile tracks pull over, they leave the road and completely leave. Like they know that if a snowmobile pulled over there on the side of the road, it's setting a trap. So they've learned that, you know what I mean? So wolves, I'm just trying to give you a taste of their intelligence. And then, like I said, too, when it comes to calling in wolves, you kill one wolf using a particular technique and you ruined it for other wolf hunters. Like and it's great. I mean, I think every wolf counts, right? You kill a wolf, you've saved about 20 elk that year. So you should pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
At least. But, I think the thing is, that's the biggest issue is people don't know how to get in there and just be effective in killing. They'll kill one, and then it just educates the rest of the pack. And then they won't come into a call again. Or sometimes that's the same with trapping too. If you're not effective on that trap line and you only catch one out of the group, the rest of the group kind of figures out, okay, well, obviously this is a danger zone. And so sometimes they'll still go in there to get bait, but they're just a little bit more careful. It just really depends on the wolf. And so it's just sometimes here's another, just show a little bit more of some intelligence. So sometimes like one of the alpha males or alpha females will go into the bait site and find the best route to get in without getting hooked. And then after, she'll go in and find the best route, then all the wolves will take that route to go in there to get bait. They figure that out. Yeah, they're smart critter. And they'll hang out in areas like where there's just the least amount of hunting or just people activity in general. But anyways, it's just been such an ongoing battle with these environmentalist groups, but I'm super grateful that finally we're getting, ahead of it. We're figuring out wolves. They used to be several steps ahead of us. Now I feel like we have some very skilled trappers, between myself and 3 other really skilled trappers. I feel like just our area in general we've knocked the wolves down a tremendous amount. And we're seeing that, like I said, we're seeing animals come back. Yeah. That's for sure. And I fear for Colorado and what they're about to experience.
Me too.
Oh man.
And you guys listening, these guys, Tom and all the guys with Stuck in a Rut, they just actually released a program or a online course on wolf hunting. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So
yes.
if someone wants to learn how to wolf hunt better, where do they find that?
So it's wolfhuntingmasterclass.com. I try to make it as simple as I could so people can find it. And it's a very thorough course, not just in how to find and kill wolves, but how to do it effectively too, because to me, there's a lot of people that finally get the wolf bug, make a lot of mistakes. And I was there too. I have wised up a lot of wolves that I wish I didn't. And so for me, I want to teach everybody how to avoid those mistakes and wisen up wolves. And to be able to, from finding the wolves, the wolf pack, understanding and learning about wolves. I think that's a big thing too, is learning and understanding the wolf. I do see why people love wolves so much, and they are a big time a family unit, and the way they vocalize amongst each other is just unreal, and how they're able to communicate. I don't know of any animal that can do that. I know elk have a very complex language, but at the same time, nothing compared to the wolf. Nothing compared to the wolf. Like they can communicate to each other, like, and be far apart from each other on a hunt. You know what I mean? And strategize on a hunt. Like it's crazy to understand that. But like for me, that was probably the hardest thing too to know, is like I'm calling in wolves and they're howling, they're barking at me, and I didn't know what these sounds meant. And so over time I figured out what these sounds are. So I do, that's another thing I teach on the course, is teaching people, all right, so if you hear this sound, this is what it means, so on and so forth. And and then I also share several different scenarios that you should put yourself into. Like if the wolves are doing this, do that, So for me, and I'm not just using my own knowledge, but I'm using the knowledge of other experienced wolf hunters and trappers. And I've actually got involved other experienced wolf hunters on the course too. So I'm not the only one talking and teaching people how to wolf hunt. I'm trying to get all the knowledge of some of the best wolf hunters that I know, because literally, we talked about elk being 10% success rate. You know what wolves are in Idaho, the success rate of a wolf hunter?
I'm assuming it's a lot lower.
It's under 1%.
Holy cow. Yeah.
Under 1%. We have a lot of wolves. So why is it under 1%? Well, it's their intelligence and but for me, I'm killing wolves every year. So you can consider that, I guess, as 100%, right? I buy multiple wolf tags, more than I probably need, but I never want to be in a situation where I have to stop shooting, you know? So I buy enough to where I'm like, okay, so, and I almost like last year, I killed 4 in one, you know, and just, it was like 40 seconds. Like it was just like boom, 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 boom. And I had 5 tags. I'm like, you know what? I probably should be carrying a little bit more than 5 tags. Cause like, you know what I mean? What if there was 6 standing there? Like
Right.
I would have had to let one go.
Right.
And I never want to have to break the rules either. I know people say, shoot, shovel, shut up. But I'm like, you know what? We don't have to break rules. We can buy tags. Let's do things by the law. Let's follow law. And I think that also too shows these environmentalist groups that we are responsible hunters and we're not going to be out poaching and stuff. We want to do things by the book. We want to do things the right way. And we just want to manage a predator. And I do like, and now starting to see the wildlife come back. I am not as much of the kill every wolf and, well, I am very aggressive with killing wolves, but at the same time, I don't feel like wolves are ever going to leave our ecosystem. They're not going to leave our landscape. But I have noticed that if you keep the numbers down just enough, our wildlife come back. And our goal is not to extinct the wolf again. It's just to keep the numbers to a manageable level.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like in any predator, you're just trying to manage them so the other prey can be managed also. And my 2 cents on wolves is, I think they're a very cool animal. Obviously they're super intelligent, listening to you, Tom, talk about them too. But the killing for the killing to kill is where I'm like, yeah, that's not good. And I know, like, obviously, raising a pack, they have to teach the young how to kill, and that's a lot of it too. But if they kill just to sustain, great. But 140 sheep just because they're sitting ducks, or and if that's what they're doing to other prey and other animals, man, that's not cool in my eyes, and that's why we definitely got to manage the population.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's not a fluke. Some people say, "Oh, that was just a fluke situation," but no, this has happened multiple times. I mean, I use the example of a wintering range where they've killed excessive amount, and a lot of times they'll leave animals wounded. So one of my good friends recently found a wolf killed, like an elk dead, where the wolves ripped out the back tendons out of the back of the leg, and they must have never caught back up to the elk. They ripped it out and the elk got away, and the wolves are like, okay. And he said he was following the wolves and the blood trail of the elk. Then the wolves finally just gave up and left the mountain. Well, that elk, he followed the elk and he followed it till it died and it bled out. But it's just like, that's a wasted elk right there. And then he said a waypoint. He's like, I'll come back and check 3 weeks later, see if wolves come back. They never did. They never came back to check that kill. But yeah, I mean, multiple occasions in the wintertime, the animals are very dependent on their wintering ranges as well. They'll use roads to travel. Moose will do that. It's just easier to travel on a road that, snowmobile is packed down. And so wolves will take down the moose, and you'll find, in the wintertime, you'll find moose dead on the side of the road, on the snowmobile, on the side of the snowmobile road, where they'll just kill the moose, they'll leave. And, and even if the wolves do end up coming back, the crows got it cleaned up by then. You know what I mean? They're just very sloppy. They're very sloppy killer. And I mean, when it comes to finding and killing the animal, I feel like they got the system worked really well. But when it comes to like preserving meat, like a mountain lion would, or a grizzly bear, they bury their kill. They'll come back and hit it multiple times later, while a wolf just kills. And if they can find more to eat, they won't come back to the kill. But if they can't find more to eat, they'll come back. You know what I mean? They'll kill, they'll get a bite or two, and then they go. And I've seen multiple times where carcasses are just left with a couple bites. And I wish, and I think the environmentalist group, we say, like, I wish they'd educate themselves. They just choose not to. Like, I wish they would look at this and say, okay, like, we kind of see the issue, but they just completely erase that. They don't even try to acknowledge that even being a thing, and they say we're lying. It's like, well, come here, I'll show you.
Yeah.
It's right here.
It's in
right
my
here.
backyard. Thanks a
It's
lot,
right
by
my
the way.
yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I want predators on their landscape. I want all animals on our landscape that are meant to be here. But I want them managed. Mountain lions, you know, you don't have to be so aggressive because they don't reproduce as quickly as a wolf. Same thing with bears too, right? Like, I'm upset that we're not allowed to hunt grizzlies. Our grizzly bear population, it has been proven that is, the wildlife biologists have said they're not endangered anymore, but they're still on the list because of the environmentalist groups, right? It's been on and off. And so we have grizzlies right now getting into our friends' chicken coops and stuff as we speak. It's happening right now this spring, and we can't do anything about it. And, you know, we just want to manage our predators. We don't want to extinct them. We just want to manage them to an extent to where we don't have these conflicts. And it's same thing with wildlife too. There's the only group of caribou in Idaho is completely extinct, by the way, now. And but before that, it's like, how did that caribou become extinct? And if you look back, they first of all made that same area that the last 12 caribou were alive, they made it a grizzly bear recovery zone.
Oh, geez.
So, okay, why? You know, so first of all, they were trying to shut down any public access for people to be back there because it's harming the caribou habitat and harming the caribou in general, right? So they shut down logging, they've shut down road access, they've done it all. Well, then they made it a grizzly bear recovery zone. And then now they have wolves. Well, and at the time, you know, in the day, you know, like I was telling you, around 2008, 2009, the wolf pack moved into that area about roughly. And they were still an endangered species, so you couldn't hunt wolves either. So how do you expect this caribou herd to survive? There's no way, absolutely
No way.
And they're still, even now that they're extinct, they're officially extinct. They're trying to blame everything but what really happened. And like I said, as a local, we've seen it. We understand what was the cause of it. But these groups come up and they're like, oh, it's climate change, this, it's that. And then now they're still trying to shut it down for caribou habitat. It's like, oh, that's like, there may be a chance we want to bring caribou back in there. So let's still keep it shut down. And it's like, they're not there.
What about the grizz and the wolves that live there now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's sickening that, you know, we don't have that control to manage particular species. I mean, as of right now, I'm grateful we're managing the wolf, but we still don't have access to manage the grizzly. Mountain lions, I mean, I would say we have mountain lions on a very good, well, I actually think we don't even have a lot of mountain lions like we used to. So, although some may try blaming things on mountain lions, I really don't think they're that much of an issue. They're a little bit too laxed on the hunting season there. Some may like that, some may not, but you literally can buy a mountain lion tag and come hunt here with pounds, you know, and there's no quota. And so I'm a little biased with that. You know, I think there should be a quota, but I mean, that just shows, but for me, I'm just trying to show people that, look, I'm not out to try to extinct the predator. Like, I'm just here to manage the predator. I'm all right with them being in our landscape, but let's try to manage them to an extent. And the reason why we're so aggressive with wolves is because they reproduce really quickly. What a really good friend of ours who has, he's up to, between him and his son, he's up to 90 wolves here. That's a lot. He's killed 90 wolves.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And one of the areas that he traps, he'll literally trap out every single member of the pack. But if all it takes is a breeding pair, you get two wolves that move in to the new territory, boom, they get a litter of 6 pups. You got yourself a pack again. That quick.
That quick.
One spring.
Yeah.
Yep. It's not like a mountain lion, you know, like if a mountain lion population is low, or even the grizzly bear population is low, it takes a little time. They don't have litters. They have, you know, one or two here and there, and they don't reproduce as quick. So, if you're allowed to hunt grizzlies, for example, it wouldn't be like everybody can get a grizzly bear tag, you know what I mean? But it would just be nice to have something, just something, to where we can manage at least the problem bears and some of the ones that do have, that we're fighting in the mountains too. I mean, prowlers and not, ones that come down to the valley have issues, but like the ones that disturb camps.
Right.
And and this is an issue too, that like they'll take grizzlies out of Glacier National Park and drop them up here. Like they're like, oh, this is a problem bear, like let's get it out of the park. Oh, let's drop it up here. Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
There's a problem bear there. They say once a problem bear, always a problem bear. So, but yeah, these are the issues that we deal with, but we're definitely receiving a little bit of recovery. And I see the night and day difference. I'll go to places like Colorado and Utah and hunt. And although some people try blaming the hunting pressure up here, but I'll go to those places, like you said, the pumpkin patch, and the numbers of wildlife, mule deer and elk, far greater than here, far greater. And the thing is, the reality is we used to have those numbers. And so I do know for a fact that the wolf is the one to blame. It is. We witnessed it. Yep. And I always try to remind people too. Well, there's a lot of new move-ins here, and they don't know any different because they think this is normal. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like this population, if we see 30 elk in a field, that's normal. And it's like, no, that's not normal. We used to have 300 elk in that would come in winter in that field. Yeah. Right. Now there's 30. That's not normal. That 300 elk covers 6 drainages. When the snow leaves and they go up in the mountains, that covers 6 drainages. You got 30 elk that cover 6 drainages. And I'm talking big drainages, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's, so it's sure you see elk, it doesn't mean that their numbers are fine, Yeah. Like I said, you just put me on a soapbox. I'll stop.
Hey man, no worries, dude. It's good information, man. Like, it's information that people need to know, and especially the knowledge that you guys have of hunting wolves too. And I'm nervous for Colorado. Obviously, that's my home state, and that's where I hunt. That's my backyard. And now we have introduction of wolves, and I don't know how many years it's going to take for it to get out of hand. And hopefully, we have a hunting season at some point too.
Yeah, you still got some time, so enjoy the moments. Enjoy killing the big muleys and big bulls you guys still have. It's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming. It takes time for those packs to really get big, but man, I tell you what, if a pack gets over 12, that's like destruction you've never seen.
Really,
you don't want them to get that big.
No.
Yeah, I feel like if you can knock them down to where like there's like 4. And you start seeing some animals come back, you just got to really keep pressure on them to where the wolves are always behind them. just think, no, you're not the only one hunting this elk, buddy.
Yeah.
Stay out. But it's fun. And that's why I got into it, is because of, I want the old days to come back. I experienced the greatest days. Moose, oh my gosh. We had some great moose here. Like, how's the moose population in Colorado, by the way?
My opinion is super high. I see a ton of moose when I'm out hunting.
Awesome.
I see a ton.
Do they ever mess with you when you're trying to bugle elk at all?
No, not usually. I haven't had them mess with me. Obviously they're not scared of that. In my encounters with moose, they can give a crap less if I'm there, and sometimes they get curious and want to come up and see what I'm doing.
Right.
So, have you had a mess with you?
Oh, just like, well, when we had high numbers of elk and moose, in my younger years, the moose would come in to chase off. Like, they don't like elk here. Like, they just absolutely, like, if there's an elk bugling, you would hear a moose in the background just go, oh, oh, oh. And you go and chase the elk out of the drainage. Like, he's just like, this is my territory. Huh. Well, they do that to us too. We're trying to bugle in the bull elk. All of a sudden, get a moose just come out of a canyon, just come up and try chasing us off. And we're sitting there trying to wave the dang moose off. Like, like we, if it was me, Dad, and Travis, like Dad and Travis would be setting up to try to call on the elk. And then they'd call me, chase that bull moose out of the way. Like, it's going to F up the hunt. So I go in there and I get out of here, get out of here. And you just see this moose just looking at you like this, big eyes. They're just like, okay, I'll get out of here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude.
I actually have
And
a moose.
yeah.
I have a moose hunt coming up here in Canada this year, so I'm excited to do that. Yeah.
Oh, exciting. Are you, what area or would you rather keep it?
No, it's Saskatchewan and
Oh, cool.
archery
Yeah.
hunt. Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited about it. Because
That's
obviously, you know,
fun.
to draw a moose tag in Colorado is like a once in a lifetime thing. So I'm still waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I drew one time and I'm really in Idaho and I made the mistake in passing up a big one. We, again, I didn't know how good we had it until we lost it, but we had some big moose where we lived. And we have a lot of sheds still to prove it. Travis, actually, I don't know if you know, so my brother Travis has the world's largest Shiras moose sheds.
No
World's,
kidding.
not state.
World's.
The world's largest. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've defined tons of moose paddles, and they were all like lots of Boone and Crockett size, and still have them to this day. Thankfully, you know, I know a lot of shed hunters sell their sheds, and for us, we keep the big ones, and so we still got a pile of big ones of like, and it's to show like, hey, this is what we used. This was our quality, and there's still a couple out, but not near the numbers. I remember a day after high school, Travis and I walked. You know, we had 2 hours before dark. We did a shed hunt. We came out with more than we can carry. And I think it was like 13 moose paddles in just one day fresh. And there was multiple days like that, but that was just one of the more memorable ones before the wolves came through. But anyways, yeah, the quality was great. Seems like that's the first to go though with wolves is the wolves go after the dumbest, and the moose seem to be, they stand their ground. They don't run off, and they're the first to go. Elk are a little bit better at adapting, but they still have issues, right? So you'll, like for us, we saw them kind of hanging out in the cliffs. The ones that didn't pull to the valley would actually climb up get in the cliffs with the mountain goats. So here we are calling an elk in like the cliffs.
Yeah. From the mountain goats. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we're just like, we literally, so the one I killed, it was like he was like a 315 class bull. Nice on public land, you know, with my bow, and we're sitting there getting this bull worked up, and all of a sudden a mountain goat walked past us. Like, it was just like the new normal. Before they would go in those big, you know, those big basins where it's like kind of swampy, where they can wallow and stuff and get themselves worked up. But then they kind of just hung out in the cliffs, and they create their own routes. And I mean, some of those big bulls, I mean, they do figure out how to survive wolves, and
right.
And when you hunt them, you realize, wow, okay, I can see why you're still alive. You're you're pretty skittish.
Yeah. Well, and they get pushed way up into the high hills and in the up with the mountain goats, man. So
yeah. And so they find out how to survive, and they find the routes too. I think they figure that out with people too. They find the, you know, hunting pressure. They find the routes of people. They find the wolves have routes. I killed it was a 338 class bull in 2019, and he was a 9-year-old bull. No, was he 9? I got him aged. He was either 9 or 8. I think it was 8 actually. Sorry, I think because I got him aged at Madison Labs, so he was 8 years old. But I was thinking to myself, how did he outlive wolves? 8 years, 8 years. But he actually lived below, like there's the wolves, like when I see them, they rise above, like it was kind of the opposite. We're on top of the mountain. It was actually kind of flatten out there, and that's where the wolves run. Well, when you get about halfway down the mountain, it actually goes to straight cliffs, and he'd live in those. And that's where he'd live, is in there. And he'd pull the cows in there too. The cows didn't like being in there, but when he would get the herd, he'd pull them in those cliffs to bed down. Yeah. And then he'd just sit up on the edge of the cliff, and he'd just look over the valley. And like the reason why I got him aged is I knew he had some age to him, because I had his sheds 3 years and he hasn't grown an inch. I'm like, man, he's at his peak. He's not getting bigger. And so I was curious with the age. And so, 8, which wouldn't you think that an 8-year-old would still grow a little bit, maybe? Oh,
Man, I mean, I guess it all depends on where, his environment he's living in, nutrients, stuff like that. But you would think we
yeah.
still got a little growth to
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, well,
Yes. But I'm glad I got him. Yeah.
yeah.
How about yourself? How was last hunting season?
Oh, let's see. Last year I did a lot of guiding last year for elk. I had an archery hunter, I actually took my mom on her first elk hunt, which was
Nice.
fantastic. I mean, the hunting itself wasn't amazing, but the experience was fantastic. And that's an episode. I have an episode up with her. But hey, I'm absolutely obsessed with hunting. I'm going to go on as many hunts as possible. This spring was great. I went to Hawaii and shot a couple mouflon sheep on the Big Island of Hawaii, and then I went to Mexico and shot a Ghoul's turkey in Mexico. And then right after Mexico, I went to Canada and shot a black bear in Canada. So the spring was great for me. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. I'm all about just like,
whacking
I want to go
stacking.
whacking and stacking. I just want to go on as many adventures as possible, hunting adventures as possible. That's, I just want to go experience everything, so, and at some point,
have you had a chance? Yeah. Have you had a chance to hunt Alaska at all?
I haven't. That is like on the top of my bucket list, is to hunt Alaska. I'm trying to figure out a way to do it without spending $15,000 to do it.
Yeah.
I need to find a pilot. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. When Travis and I first got into it, and this was before we knew Adam, I'm sure I assume you know Adam and Tana, right?
I've seen them.
My brother-in-law.
Yes. Well, and which brings me to a question. So you and Travis, so Stuck in the Rut who all makes up Stuck in the Rut? Is it you, Travis?
So Travis. So it's myself, Travis, Adam, who's my brother-in-law, Tana's my sister, and then my little brother Trevor. It's just pretty much the family. It started off with, Travis is the owner of Stuck in the Rut. It started with family and friends, and then it just kind of over time just went to family. Now it's everything in the family. And then every so often, we'll hunt with a friend and kill something here and there, but we wouldn't consider him like a team member.
Right.
But yeah, that's makes up Stuck in the Rut. Now, although Travis is the owner, I deal with probably most of Stuck in Rut now. And then I think what it was so Travis, with his job and his occupation, he obviously makes way more with building than he does with the hunting industry. And so for him, he's like, I'm just going to still do it as a hobby. I still own Stuck in Rut, but he's like, for me, yeah, I make way more money building houses. And so for me, I was like, well, I still see a lot of potential Stuck in Rut. So I kind of just took over the whole social media side of things, from editing for YouTube, from Instagram, everything. And so I've dealt with that. And then Tan and Adam have helped with that too. And Travis is finally getting back. I think everybody's seen potential with it now, to where now we're looking at more of a business side than as a hobby side. You know what I mean? And so as of the past couple of years, we've just gotten way more attention than we were expecting. And so we're like, okay, we need to do something with this, I mean? We would love, I think everybody's dream is to do their hobby for a living. If it's soccer, if it's football, anything. For us, it's hunting. Hunting is our passion. It's our obsession. If we can do it for a living, it'd be great. And just as of right now, it still wouldn't consider it as like, we can't just drop our jobs and just go full time in the hunting yet. It's helping with paying the bills, which is great, but we still have to keep our day jobs. You know what I mean?
Yep. And I'm in the situation where I'm trying to make this my living. It's not 100% there yet. I'm trying not to get a day job. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
And we'll see how this year goes. But yeah, if you can make something that you love to do as a way to pay the bills and still love to do it, that's kind of the ultimate goal. And you guys are on YouTube. You have a big YouTube following. You guys are on Instagram. Any other platforms you guys are on?
Oh, so I started a TikTok as a joke, and it's up to 198,000 followers right now.
Holy cow, man. That's great. You just
So
repurpose all the old content and put it on TikTok.
yeah, I was just like,
Yeah.
I have a bunch of really cool clips over the years, you know what I mean? Where I just like, oh, I'll throw this clip in, I'll throw that clip in. But I'm always fighting TikTok because I kid you not, I got flagged for packing it. Well, the elk head was even covered in my pack, so you couldn't even see the elk head.
Mm.
It was just the rack, and I'm walking up the hill. They took it down. You know, they take down sheds, for goodness sake. If I was packing out a shed, TikTok takes it down, and then I have to, yeah. And then they kind of do like, you know, if you've probably heard of the shadow ban, where all of a sudden they don't get your content out there. And
Yes.
so TikTok is kind of annoying. And I have my moments where I won't do any TikToks for a month. I'm just like, screw TikTok. And then I'll finally post some stuff in it again. And if it starts getting traction again, then I'll start focusing on it. Cause it's brought in a bunch of new people that haven't followed us before or haven't found out about us before. And the issue with TikTok though too is the clips are so short that you can't really explain what's going on. And so people, yeah, I think it's just the natural man always assumes the worst. And I'll give a prime example. So Tana was packing a moose on her back or rack.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how many people came on there? Like it was, I'm not even saying 100, it was over 1,000 comments saying like, you're going to get shot. Keep carrying the rack like that. And people don't realize how isolated that area was, like how little people, like the closest person was probably 20 miles away. You know what I mean? And it's the same with Idaho too. Like, you know, Idaho, we pack our racks. Most of the time we try packing them that racks facing down.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're dealing with brush that's chest high,
oh yeah,
you can't pack racks facing down. You have to pack them facing up. But if you're in an area that's super isolated and you're the only person back there, like you're going to be okay. Now I understand there's people that are like, oh, you just never know though. And it's like, but really though, there's only one place to land a plane and we're there. Like there's no one, like you can't hike there. It's marsh. You can't get a 4-wheeler. You can't get horses. Like
there's nowhere to
literally
get
the
there.
only people there. There's nowhere to get there. And
Yeah.
so it's people don't understand that. I mean, we're like in areas like that, our biggest fear is a bear. If anything, a bear mistakes us as a moose and we're toast, you know? And so that's the worry, like that, you know, people in areas like that's our least worried. But I will say about Idaho, you know, like where we're hunting now, like this was the first year I'm like, oh shoot, I think I need to be wearing blaze orange now. Like it's pretty out of control. There's too many trigger happy people. Yeah. I'm worried about a wolf hunting too, just like howling. Oh, there's so many people that are just like, everybody's so trigger happy about killing wolves. And it's like,
yeah, you
to be careful. But and that's, I was going to, oh, sorry. What were you saying?
I was going to say, I don't care if I harvest an animal or like even see that many animals, but if I can be somewhere where I don't see any people, I'm super happy. You know, like when I go hunting, I just don't want to see other people. I just want to be up there by myself on a mountain. So I always try to like go places where most people don't want to go, or it's hard to get to, or, you know, I just don't want to see other people when I'm out hunting. So that's why I really need to get to Alaska and and that's the remote of the remotes right there. Right. So that's definitely on the top of my list.
Yeah. And Travis and I over time, so this was before we met Adam and Tana, we would do the whole drive. We drive all the way to Alaska and hunt caribou and moose. You can do that. You can hunt caribou and moose in Alaska without an outfitter, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, and I know that with inflation right now, it's way different, but the cheapest I ever was, you know, after the trip was over, food, travel, everything, my cheapest moose hunt was $3,000, $3,500. And I killed that's not bad at all. If you can get it under 5, you're good.
Oh yeah.
But we've had some major breakdowns with pickups, and those get costly. And so I mean, over time we were learning, every trip, we're like, how can we budget better than the last one? You know what I mean? And then if you do find a plane to fly you out, we would budget like, well, how many times to fly out? Cause you can either hire, somebody to fly you in the remote spot of Alaska, but then they fly you out, they can't fit all your gear and food. And so you're sitting there like, that one trip Travis and I did, we're like, we need to do it all in one flight. So we were just like, we got a lot of, mountain houses at the time. This was before Peak Refuel came out. But we just like stacked, we pushed every potato in every corner of that plane, trying to get as much in there. And it was nice because we literally, what was neat about that hunt is we killed them. I killed a moose right off the bat. It was day 2 of the hunt. And so we were eating steaks almost every night after that. And then we had steak and potatoes. And then we were camped right next to a lake where we had the whole place to ourselves. And the pike were just overpopulated in that lake. I kid you not. You could throw anything in that lake and a pike would grab it. And so like we grabbed this, we're like, we didn't even, we grabbed the fishing pole because we knew we were going to be landing on a lake, but we had no clue that it was pike. Like, shoot, we got a little trout pole with 4-pound test. and so we made a little leader, like of just like some parachute cord that we had and a spinner, and that and we just put the test really light, you know what I mean? Like, so we're the drag really light, you know what I mean? So you're just sitting there and you just fight a pike for like 30 minutes. And I've never broke the line the whole trip, which is amazing. We caught tons of pike. So we were eating pike. Oh yeah, rice. We packed a lot of rice too. So it's like potatoes and rice. And we never touched our mountain houses. Like we were eating fish and rice, then we killed some grouse. And so we were eating, it was like
surf and turf. And
so we were living. That was kind of nice because we had a lot of food that off the land there. You always want to prepare for the worst, but it was probably, I would say, I've been on a lot of uncomfortable hunts in Alaska, but this was the most comfortable hunt we've been on. And I think we stayed there. It was a total of 12 days at that camp. And it was one of those times, like one of those very few times where you could have stayed another 20 days. So you're just enjoying. It was just so enjoyable that I was like, man, I could stay here another 20 days if I had to.
You guys must have good weather when you're there too.
And the weather was incredible for Alaska. Yes.
Yeah.
Like there's some Alaska. I've had the opposite too. And it was one of the earlier times, one of my first moose hunts I did Alaska, where it downpoured. We killed 3 moose in 9 days, and it downpoured day in and day out. And you just threw on your wet clothes every day to go back out in the woods. And that was the most miserable hunt I've ever been on. It was just, well, no, I guess I lied there. I've been on a really bad Dall sheep hunt too. So I won't get into that, but that was a bad one. But yeah, but Alaska, I'd say if the bears aren't going to kill you, it's the weather. The weather is horrible. So always be prepared with that. The only real gear that we've seen that can handle Alaska weather is QU. QU is incredible for Alaska.
Yeah.
And we swear by it.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then the Hall Road that we did that for caribou, that was fun. Just
Would you recommend would you still recommend the Hall Road for caribou, or do you think is there a lot of people on it?
There's a lot of people on it, but it's like what you said. If you literally walk a couple miles off the road, everybody hunts from the road.
Right.
And there's there's a section where if you go 5 miles out, you can hunt with the rifle.
Right.
But anything from the road on is bow only. If you go 2 miles with a bow and arrow in your hand, you're the only person chasing those caribou. And if you hit the migration right, it is, oh my gosh, you talked about like having action, the most action of my life. And I was talking, it was the first, and we hit it right, where it was the first time we ever did this hunt. We were seeing 1,000 caribou a day.
Holy
and I was so afraid of like not being able to fill my tag, because I just packed the bow. I was like, there's nowhere to hide. How am I supposed to hide to kill a caribou? And I think I got so antsy that when we got out of the rig, we're just like, we're not even going to set up tent. Like we're seeing caribou run everywhere. Let's just get out and just start running in the tundra. We got out and run in the tundra. And this bull looks at me and starts running toward us. And so I get down and I just pulled back my bow, and he ran in curious, looking like, walked up to 40 yards, and I stuck it. I was like, I was like, now my hunt's over. Like
Yeah.
40, like the first 40 minutes of the hunt and my hunt was over. So the rest of the time I'm like, I guess I'm the cameraman of the trip. And so then, but it was just so fun. We'd watch these bulls. You think you want to go with those groups, but you don't. Like you see like a big group. I mean, you're seeing 1,000 caribou a day. You were seeing like a group of 50 here, a group of 100 there, a group of 20 there, and it just add up to 1,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like what you see in the Discovery Channel where the ground is just dotted like of 1,000 caribou at one time. It's like there's like several groups just moving through. But what was so fun is you'd mess up a stock. Let's say you're trying to belly crawl to a bull that's bedded down, but when you're getting right to the range to shoot, then he gets up and starts moving, and you can't get him to stop. Like, oh, that's over. But he's like, oh, well, there's another one there. Let's try spot and stalking that one. And it was just all day spot and stalk. I mean, your belly is just wet for just crawling on the tundra because there was nowhere to hide. So you'd find a bull where the wind was right and he was looking away from you, and they have like this caribou have this range because there's a lot of predators in Alaska. So caribou have this safe range of like 150 yards where they're like, they won't run from you.
Right.
So you can at least get to about 150 before you start to like, okay, we probably need to start crawling now. You know, like you can pretty much.
Do you guys try like decoying or anything?
We want to. So there was, I think the flags, I don't remember. I think they outlawed the flagging because like some people would do a flag and then they get down, the caribou coming in curious.
Yeah.
But the decoys, I think Montana Decoy, do they make one? The only decoys I've seen look horrible. I'm like, I haven't seen a good caribou decoy.
Yeah.
If they can make one like a frontal and in a little bit of a rack, I think you got the perfect decoy with the colorations.
Right.
I almost made one because I think they would come in curious. We've had them do it multiple times, but they'll just come in to check you out. There was one that I really wanted to kill, but there was this was a different time. So by the way, I should emphasize. So that a different time we went to do the Hall Road hunt again. We've made, let's see how many times we've done that hunt. 3 times. So 3 total times we did that Hall Road. First time was incredible. Second time we missed the migration. We were just like, we were in the dead spot. And the group I was with was like getting really discouraged quick. And I was like, if we wait this out for 2 weeks, I think we'll catch another group moving through. But nobody had the patience to wait. So it ended up being a bust. That was hard. Go all the way to the Hall Road and nothing.
Yeah.
But then the following year from that, then we got, it was like not the strongest migration, but we were seeing caribou. And then I saw an absolute giant in the distance. And I told Chad, I'm like, if I can kill that thing, he's getting head mounted, like he's a big bull. And so we worked on that one, went over there, and there was another big one. He literally came in curious, saw us. We got down in the tundra. He came running in to check us out and did a circle around us about 30 yards. I could have stuck him several times with the bow, but it's like,
you
I
had
want
your
that
heart
big
set,
guy
man.
over there.
Yeah.
I had my heart set in that big one. And I did end up getting that big one. And he's a dandy. So I was just like, I'm like, we've seen thousands of caribou, and I'm like, I've never seen one that size. So I'm like, it's like, if we kill that thing, I'm mounting it. And I like they're a lot lighter than an elk too. So their rack could be about the size of an elk, but their bodies are so light. It's like packing a mule deer. I'd say like a big mule deer body. And so 2 guys can comfortably, if you're with 2 guys, you can comfortably walk off the tundra with a deboned caribou.
Yeah. Nice, man.
It's like, yeah, so it's great. I recommend it. If you're ever wanting to hunt Alaska, there's definitely ways to get around the cost of guides, and just getting the experience, at least the taste of Alaska.
Yeah.
But you just got to put the tags are the cheapest part of the hunt. It's not about buying the tags. It's about getting there, getting all your gear there, and then bringing everything back. That's going to be your biggest cost of the Alaska trip.
Yep. That's what I've heard. Yeah. And I've thought about the haul road hunt a few times. So maybe I'll do that to start with, but I just really like the idea of being flown into some remote area and just hanging for, 10 days. That's just, but
and there's some good flight. I think there is a flight service up there still going. It used to be called it was in Happy Valley up there. There was a flight service, but I think there's a different one now. But what they'll do is they'll fly you into the migration, which is great. And so,
that's great.
And so you're remote, they fly you into the migration, and then so you're kind of in the center of it, and it's pretty much guaranteed. Like the rule is you can't shoot same day airborne. So if you fly in, you can't shoot anything that day. Next day though, have at it. Go to town.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to pick your brain after this on all that good stuff. So
yeah, that's a good one to do.
Cool. All right, Tom, let's wrap up this podcast, man. I really appreciate your time and you guys listening. With a lot of cool information on wolves and predator hunting and a little bit of Alaska stuff. So, and again, where, anybody new that have not heard of these guys stuck in the rut, where can they find you, Tom?
YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. But I'd say the biggest, if you want to get in contact with us, Instagram is probably where I get the most interactions with being able to talk to people and stuff. YouTube gets so flooded with comments from negative to positive to other random stuff. Like I can't keep up with YouTube anymore with the comments. Want to get in contact with us, message me on Instagram. That's like my texting is Instagram. You know what I mean? Like that's where I see what people are asking. If anybody has any questions about the courses, I do a mule deer course too. We didn't have time to get in that. That's okay. But wolf course, whatever, that's where to find us.
Yep. And I'll link everything up here in the description of this podcast so you guys can see it. And Tom, for your knowledge, this will be on YouTube, Spotify, Carbon TV. So it'll get out there. And
nice.
Lots of different platforms that people can see, and you'll see all their links in the description on each platform.
Oh, nice. Right on.
All right, guys. This is the Western Obsessions TV podcast. Thanks for your time. I appreciate each and every one of you. This is the Western Obsessions TV podcast, where hunting's not a hobby, it's an obsession.